Hi, everyone. Welcome to a special Waking to the New Dawn. Today, Kristen and I are going to have a little bit of dialogue around the upcoming holiday season. Welcome, Kristen. Great to see you. And what is it that we want to talk about today?
Well, you and I were talking last week or so. We haven't done a recording together for a little while.
That's right.
And there is, obviously a lot of momentum, I would say, with awakening to the new dawn. But we decided to do something not in usual format, not, doing like the messages and the meditation, but just you and I having a conversation today.
Right.
And of course, I was thinking, well, of course, we're coming up to Thanksgiving. Of course, it's the season of gratitude. And not that gratitude can ever be overdone, right? Because we should always, every day of the year, every season of the year, focus on that deep gratitude. It is one of the highest frequencies,
Mhm.
of energy is, living in that space of gratitude. But as far as like from a teaching or speaking aspect, I wanted to do something a little different.
Mhm.
And I had kind of a little download, a little nudge about the cornucopia.
Oh.
And you and I talked about that. And it's a symbol, right, that we kind of bring out at Thanksgiving. We bring out the cornucopias full of like all the fall harvest, for centerpieces and different things like that. But I'm someone who always like wants to take a few steps back and like, why? Why do we have a cornucopia? What is the cornucopia? Like, what is that all about? So I just did a really quick search.
Mhm.
Like, what is the definition of cornucopia?
Mhm.
And the definition that came up was something to the effect of like a horn or trumpet
Mhm.
that had the power to be filled with whatever the owner desired.
Oh,
And it just really spoke to me like, oh my gosh, like the cornucopia of the soul.
it's a
That,
sacred space. It's a placeholder for a sacred space.
oh, you just gave me goosebumps. Yeah, I love that. And I looked a little bit further, into some of the mythology, the
Mhm.
stories of how
Mhm.
where the cornucopia originated from. And there's, a few different versions and a couple, different versions of the same version, but it has to do with Zeus when he was a baby and he was being protected and somewhere safe, I guess, than being harmed, like from the people who were after him, as a baby. But he was being nursed and cared for by kind of this she goat.
Mhm.
And there's a couple different versions of how the horn broke off, whether the goat broke it off or Zeus broke it off, but one of the horns of this nurturing goat came off. And then it was somehow Zeus was able to kind of christen it with the power that it had the ability then to kind of fill the desires of the owner's heart. So cornucopia, is the word for horn,
Mhm.
and copia is then a word for of plenty, horn of plenty,
Right.
or in English, the word abundance.
Yeah.
So,
That's very healing as well, to fill it with things that you desire, that you find are powerful and sacred, and then
yeah,
holding that in some reverence or making it part of the Thanksgiving ritual and tradition.
right.
Hmm.
Exactly. So, Trudy, when we talked last week, though, you shared a story about the cornucopia
I
and
did.
the family tradition that was set forth by your grandmother. So I want
Yeah.
you to tell everyone that little story.
It's interesting. It just popped up because when you mentioned cornucopia, and I thought, I have seen those. We see them every year, and it never really hit that memory nerve that sometimes certain things and certain times do. And when you mentioned it, I was just transported immediately back to a Thanksgiving gathering, which a lot of the family lived in the same town, and there were quite a few of us, I'll say, because each sides of the family had 6 siblings. So I had lots of aunts and uncles, and they had children. So we had
Wow.
plenty of cousins running around. So the tradition was that while the adults were in the kitchen cooking, we had a table that was set up with just a variety of different things. Some were little toys, some were fruits, some were vegetables, and the list goes on. Just imagine whatever might be something that the adults would put out for their children. And then we each had our own cornucopia, and we were allowed to choose from all these different items until our cornucopia was filled. And then that became the centerpiece for the dinner table. Well, there were more than one dinner tables, actually.
Right.
Adult and children tables.
Right.
Right. The cornucopias then were the centerpieces for that dinner. And I'm sure there was method to their madness in that it kept us quiet and out of their hair during the cooking time. But it also was a lovely tradition. And of course, we had some conversations among us as children, who got what, and that seemed to always work out. So there was a lot of lessons there too about how to compromise, how to share, and then how to appreciate each other's cornucopia, because they were all talked about. We had to put our names on them, and they were identified. So that's my story that I shared with you. It's funny that I hadn't thought about it for, well, at least half a century, right?
Well, I love that story. And there's 2 things that I want to reflect on. First of all, maybe it wasn't even intentional. It probably wasn't. But I love how your grandmother and the adults allowed you, as children, to choose what you wanted to put in your cornucopia. That allowed you to really gravitate towards the desires of your heart, or the things that you personally were attracted to, that you wanted to stuff in your personal cornucopia, which is such a reflection then of the cornucopia, that imagery of the cornucopia of the soul. And what do we want to choose? Because that's the other word that I want to focus on here for a few minutes, is choose. What do you want to choose as your harvest, as your bounty, as that fuel for the soul? Because, we're what, 2/3, we're nearing, towards the end of, the fall equinox, which is a celebration of harvest. And personally, soulfully, it's about gathering all the rewards of the soul. How have we grown? How have we evolved? What are the soul gifts, that we've brought forward, through this last kind of planting and blooming season? Now we're ready to harvest all that. So I kind of envision this cornucopia of the soul then being like our harvest and our inner gathering bounty that's going to fuel the embers of that inner light as we get ready to go into the winter seasons of hibernation and reflection, and how we use the soul then, that inner light of the soul, during those dark winter months to start envisioning and dreaming of what we next want to create in our lives. What do we want to then plant, coming out of this next winter season, and so we can harvest it again. So choosing what we want to stuff, our inner cornucopia with as fuel then for our next season. And we've talked about, or I've talked about in some of our waking sessions in the past, about choices. And choices typically are fueled by beliefs.
Yes.
Beliefs are typically fashioned, fueled by things that have happened in the past. Some kind of experience, some kind of past. Like we typically make a choice about whatever it might be, something really large or something really insignificant, but we typically choose from some kind of basis on a past situation or experience.
Mm-hmm.
And we are at this pivotal time again, just to kind of share with each other, remind everyone real quickly what Waking to the New Dawn has been all about. We are in the process of the most massive, monumental, greatest shift in human evolution that has ever occurred on the planet, It's massive. It's a simple shift, but it's a massive shift. It's a simple shift of learning how to live by the inner authority of your soul guidance rather than the outer authority. It's really simple in concept, but it's hard to do because we've never done it. We haven't ever existed like that, where we are each and every one of us truly living our truth by simply heeding to the inner guidance of our soul, of our higher self.
Mm-hmm.
So we've been kind of conditioned and existed and kind of programmed, not necessarily good or bad, it's just the way it's been, by allowing like our outer influences and our kind of past experiences to shape and mold the choices that we make. So I really want to encourage everyone, kind of a little homework assignment. And I've brought it up before, like ever since the beginning of this year of 2022, I've been kind of talking about this. I actually, though, just started really consciously doing it for myself, like keeping a journal and actually writing things down.
Mm-hmm.
But the question that I encourage everyone to really ask themselves is, what would you choose to believe? And I want to define that a little more. What would you choose let's start with ourselves. What would you choose to believe about yourself if there was nothing outside of you influencing what you're choosing to believe about yourself, even your own thoughts? That's where this shift into the new earth, into this new paradigm, we have to bring that soul knowing up into consciousness so that we're consciously, soulfully choosing. Does that make sense?
It does. And you've very clearly articulated what the energies are at the moment from the planets, and this next week, where many planets now have moved into Scorpio. Excuse me. And we know that brings up a lot of subconscious. It can bring up secrets. It can also give us the opportunity to go deep inside of ourselves and adjust our understanding of self.
Right. That death and rebirth cycle, right? And it's powerful and it's pivotal at this point in time. Because, let's ask ourselves real quickly. Like you can ask, just internally, what would I choose to believe about my health and well-being if I had no outside experience rather than this moment and this now? What would I choose to believe about my health? What would I choose to believe about my relationships, about my capabilities, about the life I want to live, about the world that I live in? If I wasn't, because, our mind is so powerful and our past experiences are so powerful, and the programming of the way that we've existed now for thousands and thousands and thousands of millions of years is so heavy that we need to start bringing this into like consciousness, a conscious point of soulfully choosing. What would I choose to believe about myself now in this moment, not based on any other influence of any other kind? And if beliefs are choices, I'm going to choose that I am healthy, well, strong, and whole, that I am capable, that I live in a world of peace and joy and harmony and beauty and abundance. You know, so, and I'm getting my own goosebumps, like listening to my own, statements. So it's soulful, like being in the present moment, in that soul alignment, allowing yourself to really listen deeply from within and consciously choosing and reshaping our beliefs so that they soulfully align in the reality in the world that we want to live in, because it starts with self. The new earth, as I've spoke before, this new earth community, this heart-based community of these universal truths, things that are true of God, the universe, source energy, love, abundance, health, all of those higher frequency energies. They're not going to happen for you or to you. They're only going to happen through you, through that cornucopia of the soul and the bounty of our soul gifts and harvest, that we're, stuffing inside ourselves, that we're going to allow then to fuel, our next steps.
Well, excuse me, I had a little thing with the voice. Yeah.
But so I kept talking there for a second.
Oh, you're great. See, that's how we work so well together. Yeah. One thing you mentioned was, and maybe the way that that I'm hearing it aligns a little bit with my philosophy, and that is that there's a philosophy called Drala, and that Drala means that from the internal self, you create the environment that aligns with the external and internal. So the internal focuses and creates.
Yeah. We have lived in a...
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, we're just having a conversation. We have lived in a global society for eons of time where we have mistakenly thought that it's the external world that creates our internal world. It has all along been the internal world that creates the external. First for kind of ourselves, but then that expands into, all of reality, all of humanity. Mm-hmm. I was in a session, my monthly kind of group, where it's our world service group, kind of as pioneers of this new earth. But we were reminded yesterday, which I want to remind everyone today, we are again at that pivotal point in this waking to the new dawn, this stepping into the new earth. So to consciously be aware in every situation and in every moment, in every choice that we're making, is it a choice coming from a perspective of serving self? Or is it a choice in soul alignment, serving soul? And that's going to take some pauses. And again, some conscious awareness of where those choices are really coming from. The choices of how you schedule your day. Who are you talking to? Who are you working with? Who are you spending time with? What are you eating and putting in your body? How are you resting? I mean, all our little choices.
A long list. Mm-hmm.
It's a long list. It's a daunting list. But learning how to switch from that outer authority and that those past-based choices, right? Because a lot of things are just habit. Well, it's just the way I've always done it, or the way that we've always done it, or the world has always done it. It's our choices and our beliefs are they're so powerful, because that's what creates the new. So it's heeding to that cornucopia of the soul, heeding to the soul, that inner guidance, that higher, your higher self, and every choice, and really pausing and asking, is this choice in alignment with that cornucopia of my soul, the deepest desires of my heart, the truth of who I really am, and supporting that? Or is it a choice that's serving the self, ego, personality?
Yeah, and that brings up community as well, because each of us have our own choices that we fill the cornucopia of the soul with. And respecting the fact that all those choices are special and unique and divine for each individual. So it helps us move past judgmental way of thinking.
Well, and that's what the New Earth community will help us move past. It's harmony, it's unity, and it's the true meaning in the truest form of honoring and accepting another. Period. No, but, and, period. The true honor and acceptance of another. When we're like so focused on ourselves and being in our own soul alignment and coming forward and living our own soul truth and truly honoring it, truly loving, honoring, and accepting ourselves, we don't really have any time and energy to even be concerned about another. Another message that I learned through this group that I connect with, and it's a message that was brought through quite a while back, but I thought it was really so powerful, that our truth will change as our consciousness and our awareness evolves. So what you just said too, understanding and knowing that where another person is coming from and where they're choosing from, and the experiences that they're having are most likely part of their soul path and things that they're meant, to grow through, to learn, to evolve through. Let's take an example of our diet. And maybe at one point, I believed, or someone believed that, wow, a bag of potato chips is a good snack. And then as your consciousness and your awareness evolves, you're like, maybe a bag of pretzels is better. You know what? I'd rather have an apple. I'd rather have an organic apple. I would rather grow my own apples, right? So that choice, that truth for me, maybe evolved and grew as my consciousness evolved and grows. So we really just have to honor where other people are at, that they might be at a different level of consciousness, a different level of awareness, or simply just living through the organic experiences that their soul came here to learn. But there is so much in this conversation that we have, kind of exposed. There's so much, to do it for ourselves, to stay in that soul alignment for ourselves, to soulfully choose in every moment, in every situation, what feels right for us, that I don't even know how we have the space to concern ourselves with others.
Well, I think we touched on a lot of high-level topics that have a lot of depth, and it may be that we might have to come back and revisit some of those with another dialogue and focus in on specific ones.
Absolutely.
There's one thing you did say, though, that I think is really interesting, and that is that living from the soul and creating the external world based on your internal preferences and way of being and your soul truth, which is the inner truth called the Atman, from where I come from. the body changes as the soul begins to gain strength and presence. So as you as you give it more confidence, give it more of your voice, give it more room to grow, what you used as an example with the apple, some of that is not necessarily just an intellectual choice based
Oh,
on
right.
what you know. It's your body actually guiding you to a different way of being on the
Yeah.
earth. And the body
Listening.
guides you through
Yeah.
the soul. So,
Yes.
yeah, a very, very powerful example that you.
Right. So that's an example of listening deeper to that soul guidance, following
Mhm,
the inner authority of your soul.
mhm.
And that's and just for the simple acceptance of that's the inner authority of my soul. We don't justify it. We don't think, well, if I choose that, though, what's this person going to say? Or then it's going to affect this. Or
Right.
how's it like this group? Like, no, that's this stepping into the new earth is just in every moment, in every situation, just simply tuning in to that higher self soul guidance and choosing from that simply because it is,
Mhm.
not
Yeah.
judging it, not questioning it, not doubting it. And the more you do that, then the more we can do that. Like you said, it as that relationship with your soul
Mhm.
grows and takes up kind of more space and becomes more common, right, and more natural, which it always has been. Like we've gotten in our own ways, right? We're not necessarily evolving to something that has never existed. We're actually kind of shedding off all the layers that have gotten in the way of what has always existed.
Right.
You know, so and then the body, yeah, supporting the body through that example follows, you know.
Yes, and what you mentioned about stepping into the new earth, the new way of being. Sometimes people are looking for that to be some kind of external reconstruction, and some of that's happening. Our social systems are shifting in some areas, dissolving in other areas that are on an earthquake. But people think, oh, the new earth, it's going to be this external reconstruction, reorganization, redistribution, all the re's that you can think of.
Yeah.
A redo, complete redo.
Right.
Really, it's about a perspective of how you live your own life on this planet
Yeah.
coming from the soul. So the new earth happens uniquely within each one of us.
Right.
And
Right.
it creates a collective entity
Yeah.
because of that.
You know, we'll wrap up today. We'll do another conversation soon.
Yes.
But it reminds me that I'll share because I keep getting this kind of little download, this little knowing like of source. Because you mentioned a few things and what you just said, and what's happening in the world right now is very unsettling.
Mhm.
Everything's being kind of tested, right? There are a lot of waves and a lot of highs and lows. So there's a lot of dismantling taken place in our political government systems and our health systems and our education systems and our society. I mean, there's a lot of things that are really, really being challenged and uprooted. And if you keep focused on that, if you keep focused on what's happening outside of ourselves, it can make us feel a little wobbly and a little off
Mhm.
center and like, what is the truth? And we're afraid, or we're like, oh, what's going to happen? Like, all of those kind of fear-based questions, kind of start like oozing up. And part of you wants to be like, well, I thought the new earth was coming, and where's all, the butterflies and the rainbows and
It's in here.
it's inside. But what source spoke to me, what God spoke to me was, ironically, the chaos of the outer world that we're seeing right now actually is a physical consequence of humanity's expanded consciousness. Okay? Because as we become more awake, as we become more aware, as we become more conscious, that expanded soulful presence of each person on the planet, as more and more people step into that expanded awareness and consciousness, what we're seeing happen is a direct effect of that. Things are dismantling because they no longer serve that higher self and that expanded awareness of who we are as soul.
Right.
So the old systems don't work anymore. So it actually is a direct consequence of people awakening.
Right. Everyone's perspective is uniquely shifting in a variety of directions, and because of that, it creates the energy of a new way of operating on the planet.
And we're not going to, we cannot create the new way without the old dissolving. And I just want to remind everyone to kind of hang on through these kind of next months, days, because it's simply a symptom of this transformation that we're in. It's just simply the old falling away, the old ways dissolving. And now, we can use that soul alignment to start choosing new, right? The new earth is all about new. So new choices, new beliefs, new ways of doing things that we haven't done before. So, but anyway, to kind of bring us full circle and wrap up for today, as we're a couple of days away from Thanksgiving, and if you see, a cornucopia at your family or gathering or wherever you might be, reflect on the cornucopia of the soul and stuffing it full with the desires of your heart. You're the owner of your inner cornucopia. What bounty, what are the deepest desires of your heart, of your soul?
We've covered a lot of ground in rather a short amount of time. So it's been a lot of fun. Sorry about my slight side trip there, but it just came on suddenly, which sometimes it does. So thank you for taking this time that we could spend together to have some dialogue around Thanksgiving and the meaning of the soul and the perception.
And the symbolism of the cornucopia, right?
Yeah, cornucopia. Yeah.
So, Trudy, you and I, we have these conversations one-on-one all the time.
A lot.
Yeah. So I think, we can, just let everyone know that we're going to, I think, be doing, maybe shifting away from the old format of Waking to the New Dawn, where just meditation and messages. And, we're just going to be having more just real conversations about, the real struggles and, the real experiencing what's going on. And, maybe sometimes we'll open it up to have others, jump in and share with us.
And this will be on YouTube. And so if you're watching it, you are on YouTube. So subscribe and like and leave comments, leave questions. Let us know what you resonated with, what you want to know a little more about, where there might be some disagreements. We would love to hear all of that. And just put it in the comments, and you might be surprised to see that it will show up again in the future with just a little bit more.
So. And be your true self. It was spoken again in my group that there is no one right way. There's no right way to create the new earth.
That's right.
It's simply being in your own soul alignment and choosing, what is right for you. That's the most powerful and inspirational thing that you can do for yourself, for the other people around you, and honestly, for the whole planet. So happy Thanksgiving, Trudy, and to everyone else. May you have a day full of abundance and gratitude.
I wish that as well, and I hope your day goes gently.
Ah, yes, like that, gently.
Bye,
And
everybody.
bye. See you all soon.